The cowboy was waiting for a woman he had never met. But when Elena stepped down from the train, he knew immediately that something was wrong. He studied her trembling hands, the unfamiliar name on the ticket, and the suitcase she held like it was the last thing keeping her from falling apart. Then he looked into her eyes and said, "You're not the woman I wrote to." Elena's heart sank. She had rehearsed 100 explanations during the long journey, but none of them seemed strong enough now. "No," she whispered. "I'm Elena Ward. My mother was supposed to come." The man standing before her was Caleb Roark, a hard-edged rancher with weathered features, a dark hat pulled low and the quiet presence of someone who had survived more storms than he cared to remember. He glanced toward the departing train, then back at Elena. Why didn't she come? Elena swallowed. She was afraid. The answer sounded painfully simple. Her mother had received Caleb's letters, accepted his proposal, and promised to travel west to become his wife. But when departure day arrived, fear had overcome her. Elena had watched her mother cry beside the packed trunk and knew that if nobody went, the consequences would fall on both of them. So Elena had taken the ticket, her mother's name, and the journey into an uncertain future. "I only came to explain," Elena said. "I never intended to deceive you. I can leave on the next train." Caleb studied her again. Instead of anger, something unexpected appeared in his eyes. "Can you work?" Elena blinked. "What?" "You heard me." She straightened. "I can keep accounts, cook, manage a household, mend clothing, and handle most things that need doing. I've worked since I was a girl." Caleb looked toward the endless frontier beyond the station. "I expected a wife. What I really need is someone strong enough to help keep my ranch alive." Elena hesitated. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you 30 days. His voice remained firm. "Work beside me for a month. If you hate the place, I'll pay your way home." Elena looked at the train disappearing into the distance. Going home meant returning to the same poverty and uncertainty she had tried to escape. Staying meant facing a stranger in a land she knew nothing about. She lifted her chin. 30 days. Caleb took her suitcase from her hand. "Then we have an agreement." The journey to the ranch was long and silent, but Elena soon discovered that Caleb was not cruel. He simply carried his burdens quietly. When the wagon crossed the snowy hills and finally reached the ranch, an elderly housekeeper named Martha opened the door and looked Elena over with guarded curiosity. "You're not the bride," Martha said. Elena managed a nervous smile. "No, I'm the woman who came instead." Martha surprised her by taking the smaller bag. "Then come inside before you freeze." For the first time that day, Elena felt a little kindness in a place that otherwise seemed determined to test her. She stepped through the doorway, unaware that the decision she had made at the station would soon change both her life and Caleb's forever. Elena discovered within 3 days that Caleb had not exaggerated the difficulties of ranch life. Before sunrise, she was already awake, helping Martha prepare meals while the workers headed outside. The house was simple. The wind constantly rattled the windows, and every task seemed harder than it had looked from the train. Caleb gave instructions without explanation and left before she could ask questions. Yet Elena refused to complain. She had not traveled across the country to surrender at the first obstacle. One morning, while searching through the kitchen supplies, she noticed that several items were missing. Later, she opened the ranch ledger and discovered something even stranger. The numbers did not match the supplies stored in the barn. Bags of flour, animal feed, tools, and other necessities were being recorded as delivered, but they were nowhere to be found. Elena spent the evening checking every page. The more she examined, the clearer the pattern became. Someone was stealing from Caleb. She waited until he returned and quietly placed the ledger before him. "Your accounts are wrong," she said. Caleb looked at her. "I know." Elena frowned. "Then why haven't you fixed them?" "Because I've been trying to figure out who is doing it." His answer changed the way she saw him. He had never ignored the problem. He simply had too many responsibilities to solve everything at once. Together they began watching the ranch more carefully. Their cooperation slowly changed their relationship. Caleb started asking Elena's opinion. Elena began seeing the man beneath the rough exterior. He repaired a broken gate for an elderly worker without asking for payment. He left extra firewood outside Martha's room when the temperature dropped. Once, Elena found him giving his own coat to a shivering stable boy. He noticed her watching and simply said, "He needed it more than I did." That small act of kindness stayed with her. But trouble arrived before either of them could grow comfortable. One afternoon, several cattle broke through a damaged section of fence. Caleb rode out immediately and Elena followed. As the animals scattered across the frozen ground, a sudden storm swept over the valley. Visibility disappeared behind snow and dust. Caleb shouted for her to turn back, but Elena refused. Then his horse stumbled on the slick ground, throwing him hard against the earth. Elena rushed toward him. "Caleb!" He tried to stand, but pain forced him back down. Without thinking, she climbed from her horse, helped him upright, and supported him until they could reach shelter. "You should have gone, Beck," he muttered. "And leave you here?" she replied. "No." Inside an abandoned shed, Elena wrapped his injured leg and shared the last piece of bread from her pocket. Caleb stared at her quietly. "Why do you keep doing that?" "Doing what?" "Staying when you could walk away." Elena looked toward the storm. "Because somebody has to stay when things become difficult." Something softened in his expression. When they finally returned to the ranch, Caleb no longer looked at her as the unexpected woman who had stepped off the train. He looked at her as someone he could trust. But neither knew that the missing supplies, broken fences, and strange riders outside the property were all connected, and that someone close to them was preparing to destroy the ranch completely. The truth was hidden in the ranch ledger, but Elena found it only because she refused to stop searching. She noticed several payments made to a supplier Caleb had never mentioned. The handwriting belonged to one of his most trusted workers. She quietly compared dates, deliveries, and missing cattle until every piece formed the same disturbing picture. Someone inside the ranch was secretly helping a neighboring landowner force Caleb into bankruptcy. Elena brought the evidence to Caleb that evening. He read every page without speaking. "You're certain?" he finally asked. Elena nodded. "I wish I weren't." Caleb confronted the man the following morning, and the betrayal was undeniable. The ranch had been slowly robbed from within for months. Once the man was removed, Caleb finally had a chance to rebuild. But just when Elena believed the worst was over, a letter arrived from her mother. Caleb found it before Elena could explain. He read enough to understand the truth all over again. "Your mother was the woman I invited here," he said quietly. Elena lowered her eyes. "I know. You should have told me everything." Elena looked directly at him. "I told you the truth the moment I arrived. You knew I wasn't her. You were the one who decided to let me stay." Caleb had no answer. For the first time, his guarded expression revealed hurt rather than anger. Elena continued, "I never came here to steal another woman's place. I came because my mother was too frightened to face what she had promised. I thought I would explain everything and leave. But then you gave me a chance." Caleb looked around the room at the ledgers she had repaired, the supplies she had organized, and the ranch she had helped protect. "You could still leave," he said. "I'll send you home safely. You'll have enough money to start again." Elena imagined returning to the life she had left behind. Yet the thought no longer felt like freedom. She had found purpose here. She had found people who needed her. And somewhere along the way, she had found the one man whose silence she had learned to understand. "I'm staying," she said. Caleb stared at her. "Why?" Elena gave a small smile. "Because the north fence needs rebuilding before winter." A faint smile touched his face for the first time. "That's your reason?" "It's the reason I'm giving you." He stepped closer. "And the real reason?" Elena's smile faded into something softer. I don't want to leave. Caleb was silent for several seconds. Then he reached for her hand. His rough fingers closed gently around hers, careful in a way she had never expected from him. Then don't, he said. There was no grand proposal, no audience, and no perfect words. There was only two people who had survived hardship together and finally understood what they had become to each other. Elena had arrived believing she was correcting her mother's mistake. Instead, she had found a home. Caleb had expected a bride from a letter, but the woman who stepped off the train became something far more important. His partner, his closest friend, and eventually the love he had never known he was waiting for. Months later, when winter covered the ranch in snow, Caleb stood beside Elena at the repaired fence. You remember your 30 days? He asked. She laughed softly. I remember. You stayed longer than 30. I noticed. Caleb smiled. Good. Elena leaned against his shoulder as the quiet frontier stretched around them. She had boarded the train under another woman's name, but she had stepped into a life that finally belonged to her. And this time, she had no reason to leave.